This is Under the Lens, featuring economic research by Gordon T. Long, editor and publisher of GordonTLong.com. The content of this presentation is strictly the opinion of Gordon T. Long and is based on facts he feels to be accurate as a result of his research at this time. All listeners are advised to independently verify all research for market changes. The following opinions are not in any way a solicitation for business, nor should they be considered investment advice. You should always consult a registered investment advisor before making investment decisions. Now, let's join Gordon for today's show.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, July the 22nd, 2015. I'm Gord Long at GordonTLong.com. As is normally the case, I have a lot of charts for us to go through this morning, so therefore I will pass over some of them quickly, but leave you to examine them further at your leisure. You'll need to open your viewer to full screen viewing, or you will not be able to see some of the detail I'll be discussing on some of the slides this morning. A reminder before we begin, do not trade from any of these slides. They are for educational and discussion purposes only. The purpose of the audio is to discuss key developments in those areas not specifically updated in this month's Global Macro Tipping Points Research Report document. The research document this month updates developments in global risk. Therefore, the slides this morning will focus on our other three report areas of the GMTP report, the macro, regional, and U.S. economic developments. As I often do, I'd like to tie them all together, though, in a discussion on what I refer to as monetary vortex and value vortex. They're clearly, as you will see, very integrated. In this regard, I would like to break them up specifically as itemized here, and then talk at the end about based on this, what I expect going forward. Over the past 3 years, we have shown this particular roadmap many times of what we saw evolving regarding what could only be regarded as monetary malpractice. Each of the steps labeled in the diagram we backed up with endless examples as they unfolded. In this month's Global Macro Tipping Point, I want to take a slightly different view of what these monetary policy decisions are inevitably leading us towards. When a family lives beyond its means by consuming more than it produces, we all know what happens. Bankruptcy, repossession of assets by creditors, etc. It is important to understand that it is actually different for sovereign nations. That is because they control the currency or money. Like any family caught in a position of not being able to meet its obligations, it is forced to make choices it has avoided through irresponsibility. Governments do the same thing, but their choices are obviously different. They almost always adopt policies of unsound money through monetary and fiscal policy games, which is the only word I can use to describe it. We won't talk here about the fiscal games such as cash for clunkers or HAMP or any of the other many programs that we've seen over the years or since the financial crisis. Instead, from a monetary perspective, we have what has been labeled as monetary experiments, such as ZIRP, quantitative easing, and Operation Twist, etc. All of these policies keep the cost of debt obligations by the government at ridiculously low levels under the cover of stimulating the economy. By doing this, it is robbing savers and pensioners of the income on their savings to allow the government to maintain its prolific and irresponsible spending. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than just that, but suffices to say that this is the kinds of basis of unsound money and monetary malpractice that evolves. If this charade is allowed to go on too long without correction, very serious consequences begin to occur, and we've been doing this for going on to 7 years now. When rates are artificially held low, we get the mispricing of risk. Debt in the form of bonds, whether investment grade, high yield, or sovereign, all trade at levels not reflecting their underlying risk. Low yields mean high bond prices. That's what a lot of people don't fully appreciate, which means they are worth more as collateral, which can be used for further borrowing. Mispricing in the debt market is far more serious than overpricing or mispriced stock prices. The whole basis of lending and the capitalist system is greatly distorted in this manner. It quickly results in malinvestments. Businesses that have no basis for existing on fundamentals such as free discounted cash flow suddenly get funding because money is readily available and must be placed with borrowers. Businesses can expand to chase markets they weren't previously able to go after. The result is inevitably oversupply of everything. The market share objectives of all the competitors soon adds up to multiples of the 100% actually available. Rather than business failures, we have them refinanced through rollovers so they can have time to get more customers and make themselves solvent. Price quickly becomes what they must fight with in an overcrowded market. When price becomes the key to competitive advantage, then cost-cutting becomes paramount. Cost-cutting becomes a matter of short-term survival. Jobs are cut, slashed. Competitive pricing also leads to a lack of price discovery on asset values as discounting, promotions, false pricing, etc. all begin to occur. When you can't make top-line sales and margins are a problem, it forces you to use financial engineering to keep the business going and alive. 95% of all S&P companies last quarter currently employed buybacks and dividends to make bottom-line earnings per share and yield look better. Without this, the business is subject to being taken over and stripped of any valuable assets and potentially loaded up with more debt as the game continues based on, fundamentally, free tax-deductible debt. As bonds trade at negative nominal rates, the incentives to take on debt for financial engineering are just irresistible. The smart money and bankers quickly see what is going on and have. Investment stalls, corporations stop spending on capital investments for the sake of using the cash for financial engineering, and banks don't want to lend because they can't find sound collateral and businesses that can sustain free cash flows unless money is permanently cheap, and they obviously don't see that happening. This is one reason we have well over $2 trillion in excess reserves by the banks held at the Federal Reserve. It isn't that they don't want to lend. It's a matter of those who want to borrow are not sound businesses. Those sound businesses don't want to invest capex and borrow to do it. These companies must use their cash to keep their stock prices up through, as I said, buybacks and dividend yield, or become a target of the plethora of private equity firms with access to almost unlimited, cheap, and nearly free money. Few invest, banks don't lend, and decent-paying jobs become more and more scarce as competition grows for fewer and fewer good jobs. Less money moving through the economy stalls everything. Low and falling money velocity, which we have witnessed for a number of years now, becomes something everyone wonders why it can't be fixed. If only the banks would lend. If only the corporations would expand. If only more small businesses would start up. More government regulations to keep the system from fracturing only adds to the reasons why investment slows even further. What we soon have, without fully understanding, is a crisis of trust. People stop trusting in politicians, businesses, government programs, and government statistics. Risk-taking basically disappears, or certainly slows dramatically. To keep this crumbling structure of unsound money and consuming more than you produce, the government must resort to more advanced and aggressive policies of what is termed financial repression. They must coordinate these policies with other central banks if these conditions go on too long, as more and more countries are afflicted and succumb to the same debt-induced programs, competitive currency devaluations, and destabilizing market manipulations. Effectively, in many ways, what we have here is a giant Ponzi scheme. Like luckless Bernie Madoff, it all comes crashing down when more people want their money back than the new money coming in the front door. In Bernie Madoff's case, it was a falling market and redemptions that caused his demise. As we see in Greece, Puerto Rico, Chicago, etc., is becoming more and more about entitlement programs and their debt programs. It is becoming more and more about entitlement programs as the baby boomers reach the stage of taking out more than is actually going into the entitlement programs. Decades of promises to teachers, policemen, firefighters, public servants are now coming due, and the money simply is not there. More games are being played to keep the system afloat, but Supreme Courts are telling governments like the city of Chicago recently what it's doing is against the law to use bonds to pay dividends and pension plans. With somewhere between $6 and $10 trillion of underfunded pensions in America alone, the debt-ridden developed economies with their large social entitlements are simply coming unglued, and short-term cash problems are looming and hitting them hard. The entitlement crisis in the United States is about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, the disability scam, and the list goes on. According to Boston University professor Lawrence Kotlikoff, the real fiscal gap in America is $210 trillion. He has had 500 economists sign off on this number along with Nobel laureates before presenting it to Congress. My interview on the details of this with him is archived on the Gordon T. Long YouTube channel if you haven't already seen it. What people fail to understand that in America, if you retire and have adjusted gross income of over $34,000, you pay 55% tax on your Social Security payments. Few people retiring today know this and are suddenly hit between the eyes, but it's worse. If you make over $44,000, you pay 85% on your Social Security benefit. Since people can't live on Social Security checks today, and the poverty level is $30,000 thereabouts, if they get above the poverty level, they effectively will be giving their Social Security check back to the government in the form of income tax. This will lock in pension poverty in the not-too-distant future for many Americans, especially since defined pensions are gone and contributory benefits reflect only 401ks, which average about $18,400, about half a year of retirement expenses. If inflation arrives, which government policy is publicly stating as its desired outcome of current monetary policies, these numbers will become even starker. There is much more to discuss here in this monetary vortex, but I want time to consider what it is all doing to the price and value as we distort markets, currency, and the cost of risk. Let's consider now what I call the value vortex, which overlays this element in terms of the monetary vortex. In an ideal world, what we pay for something should match its value. The more we pay, the more value we should get, however we define value. We are all well aware that markets don't quite operate that way, and there's always a distortion from either over-optimism and greed-driven markets or pessimistic and fearful markets after major drawdowns. Something we witness is that price-sensitive commodities often have lower value and price because they're readily available from multiple suppliers. Value-added products and services are higher priced and value because they are scarcer and often more difficult to get, generally. What has occurred in our monetary vortex is currency wars and expansion of the money supply has intentionally debased the value of many currencies. Prices have gone up as the currency it is denominated in has fallen relative to other currencies. What this has done is to distort the price axis on our diagram. Specifically, we have had unprecedented asset price inflation. This has shifted our idealized linear price-value relationship into something much more geometric. Now we get less value for new price levels. Additionally, higher value add becomes quite significantly higher as is sought after by more and more money. In effect, there becomes a premium to be paid for value add. Value add becomes more and more about scarcity. Scarcity becomes a more important driver than ever before. Scarcity, in turn, becomes more and more about knowledge and innovation than just physical materials. I think we're all conscious of that. I just don't think we fully appreciate the degree that it's now creating distortions and at the rate it is creating those distortions. Today, investments that solve this new development, they're not typically on publicly traded exchanges. The risk-adjusted basis of investment favors more and more government contracts where they have the ability to make guarantees, they being the government, that no other counterparty can make. Others can't change the laws when things go bad or unplanned, or make guarantees with taxpayer money not yet received, nor have an army to back up their claims and laws. The whole vertical axis here, shown on the right, is changing, and changing quite significantly in very subtle, but maybe not even so subtle, manner. As I mentioned, innovation and knowledge are becoming top investment performers. It really comes down to too much cheap money creating too much supply and commoditizing more and more product and services. The gap is accelerating, and it can be expected to continue in this fashion as governments become addicted to increasing money supply to stimulate falling and slowing economies. Of course, eventually this will all end abruptly. Until it does, the importance of the value vortex and the pyramid of value it creates becomes increasingly more important. More and more institutions understand the importance of this, the difference between price and value, how money is no longer a store of value, and how investment thinking must be altered. A recent survey by the Bank of America Merrill Lynch of large institutions was very telling when it showed institutions for the first time since the financial crisis are beginning to again value a barbaric store of value like gold. And that's what they consider it. But they're saying that's where value can be found. And I showed you on the previous chart, this is at the low end of that pyramid scale. What to expect? In summary, let me remind you, don't worry because you know what the government will do. Never forget, throughout any turmoil, which we're going to see in the future, they will print the money. That means what I'm showing you here in terms of price and value will become even more distorted. In closing, I'd like to take a moment as a reminder, do not trade from any of these slides. They are for educational and discussion purposes only. As negative as these comments often are, there has seldom been a better time for investing. However, it requires careful analysis and not following what has traditionally been the true and tried approaches. Do your reading and make sure you have a very knowledgeable and well-informed financial advisor. So until we talk again, may 2015 turn out to be an outstanding investment year for you, your family, and thank you for listening.
This has been Gordon T. Long, editor and publisher of GordonTLong.com. New recordings are posted regularly and can be found at GordonTLong.com. New show notifications are available through RSS feed, iTunes, and other social networking venues at GordonTLong.com.